Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, Israel is bracing for a major retaliatory attack from Iran in response to a deadly airstrike on the Iran consulate in Syria. And Donald Trump is expected to be on trial next week. We'll break down what to expect ahead of that trial, which is set to start Monday.
Plus, better weather is on the way for this weekend. Your forecast coming up as Mountain News at 5:30 starts now.
Dedicated to Southern and Eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. Iran has vowed revenge for a strike on its consulate in Syria, which it says was carried out by Israel with permission from the U.S. That revenge could come literally at any moment. CBS's Erica Brown has more from Washington.
Israelis are bracing for an attack from Iran, which U.S. officials tell CBS News is imminent.
I think this is a very dangerous time, not only for the region, but for the world.
A U.S. official tells CBS News Iran's Revolutionary Guard has completed preparations of drones and missiles to launch into Israel. And more than 150 cruise missiles are ready to go, and that number has gone up in the past couple of days to make sure some get through Israeli defenses. The impending attack is in retaliation for a deadly airstrike on the Iranian consulate in Syria that Iran blames on Israel.
Tensions are at extreme high right now. The move to strike the embassy annex of the Iranians was an extremely provocative move.
Iran also blames America for the attack on the consulate, something the U.S. denies. But President Biden has made clear the U.S. stands ready to support Israel if they're attacked.
We are devoted to the defense of Israel. We will support Israel, we will help defend Israel, and Iran will not succeed.
Sources tell CBS News Iran has also increased shipments of weapons to proxies throughout the region, putting a potential target on U.S. forces. A strike on American soldiers would force the U.S. to respond.
I am really concerned about that small skirmishes here and there could lead to an open war.
Attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East have been on the rise since the Israel-Hamas war began in October. Erica Brown, CBS News, Washington.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, told CBS Mornings that the U.S. and Israel are working together to not only prepare for any potential strike, but to try and find a way to avoid escalating tensions throughout the region. Major airlines are asking the Biden administration to block additional flights to and from China. They say Beijing's current aviation policies are creating a competitive disadvantage to the U.S. airline workers that serve China. In a letter from an industry lobby group that represents Delta, among others, members argue that the Chinese aviation market is going unchecked, which means flights are being relinquished to Chinese carriers at the expense of U.S. workers.
Well, some good news. It's Friday. The bad news, the weather is not the best. We are gloomy, also soggy and windy on this Friday. Up on First Alert Pinpoint Doppler, tracking some light showers pushing into southeast Kentucky, also southwest Virginia, zooming into Leslie County, pushing into Harlan County, also for parts of Perry and Letcher counties. And same story for portions of Wise into Dickinson and Buchanan counties, also into southern Pike County at this hour. No severe weather, no thunderstorms, but we are tracking some more light sprinkles as we go into this evening. Also watching out for this, some breezy winds gusting to 26 in Jackson, gusting to 24 over in London, and we stay breezy as we go into this evening as well. Those temperatures are much cooler today thanks to a cold front, and most of us in the upper 40s to lower 50s. Once you compare this with this time yesterday, most of us about 15 to 20 degrees cooler on this Friday. But some warmer weather is on the way, just not this evening. Those lows are once again cool. We're back in the middle to lower 40s as drier weather and clearing skies are on the way tonight. We see some more sunshine tomorrow, highs close to average. We see upper 60s and the 70s and maybe a few 80s are on the way by Sunday. Those details coming up in just a few minutes. Steve?
Cameron, thank you. Attorneys for convicted murderer Alex Murdaugh filed a notice of appeal regarding a decision that denied their client a new trial. Last year, the lawyers requested a new trial, claiming the now former clerk of court tampered with the jury by reportedly making comments that implied Murdaugh's guilt. The state Supreme Court Chief Justice determined some comments from Rebecca Hill were improper, but the words did not influence the verdict. Former President Donald Trump heads to court Monday as jury selection begins in the hush money case involving adult film actor Stormy Daniels. WYMT senior national correspondent Peter Zampa is in New York City with a preview of the case.
After months of pretrial motions and delays, the historic hush money criminal trial of Donald Trump is expected to get underway on Monday. Now, jury selection is the first order of business, and selecting a jury for a criminal trial involving a former president is unprecedented and expected to be contentious. The case is salacious, involving a porn star, a former president, and a big payoff. But jurors will be asked to look beyond that and focus on the issue at hand.
The trial is about the former president allegedly falsifying business records to conceal campaign finance violations.
Trump is facing 34 charges in this case, accused of falsifying his company's records to hide the reason behind payments to his former attorney, Michael Cohen. The prosecution says in 2016, Cohen, under Trump's direction, sent $130,000 to the porn actress Stormy Daniels as hush money for her claims of an affair she had with Trump years before. David Super, a professor at Georgetown Law, says seating an impartial jury won't be the challenge Trump's attorneys say it will be.
The question isn't whether one supports or doesn't support the former president. The question is whether one can be open-minded about this case.
The defense is staying mum on its strategy, but Super doesn't think the former president will be testifying on his own behalf.
When you put your client on the stand, you generally want to have a good idea what they're going to say. And any lawyer who thinks they know what President Trump is going to say is kidding themselves.
But he says there are a few things to watch for.
In order to win the counts that they have filed, the prosecution has to show that not only the president made false entries into the records, but they were for the purpose of getting away with campaign finance and tax law violations.
Now, after this jury is selected, this case will move on to opening arguments. In total, the expectation is this case could last up to 2 months. Reporting in New York, I'm Peter Zampa.
On Wednesday, Trump's defense team made an attempt to get the trial delayed, but the appeal was denied. The Democratic National Committee paid the legal fees related to the special counsel's probe into President Biden's classified documents case. According to filings with the Federal Election Commission, the DNC paid more than $1 million to the attorney who represented Biden in the probe. The party also paid more than $900,000 to a different firm identified in special counsel Robert Hur's final report as a personal counsel for the president. Vice President Kamala Harris is visiting Arizona today. She's hoping to use this week's restrictive abortion ruling to mobilize voters who see November's election as a referendum on women's health rights. The Arizona Supreme Court ruling revived a 160-year-old law barring all abortions except to save the mother's life. According to prepared remarks, Harris will say the ruling has turned the clock back more than a century on women's rights and freedoms. After clearing a procedural vote hurdle, a modified controversial surveillance bill received House approval. The House passed a reauthorization extension of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA. Now the Senate needs to vote on the measure before its April 19th deadline. The new version gives 2 years of reauthorization instead of 5 years. FISA is a controversial law that allows warrantless surveillance of foreigners. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida paid a visit to North Carolina today. Kishida met with Governor Roy Cooper and First Lady Kristen Cooper for a luncheon at the governor's mansion in Raleigh. This comes after Kishida met with President Biden in Washington earlier in the week. Kishida's trip to the states had been focused on global safety and to discuss security concerns about China's military. For the first time in decades, the Biden administration is boosting the cost of drilling for oil on federal lands. The new rule from the Bureau of Land Management requires firms to pay $150,000 per lease. That's up from just $10,000 in the past. This marks the first major update to the federal oil and gas leasing program since 1960. Fossil fuel companies also have to hand over more in royalties for the oil and gas they get from federal property. The makers of Thin Optics claim they are the thinnest pair of readers you can buy. But is it practical to wear them all the time? We find out in today's Does It Work segment.
Plus, we are tracking some warmer weather and some more sunshine by this weekend. Your forecast coming up.